Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation, the novel series. We are on Volume 7, Chapter 3. I have read 3 and 4. I'm not going to make promises that I can cover both of them in this video. I really want to, because I want to start speeding this up, but we'll see. I condensed Chapter 3 quite a bit. I'm trying to work on condensing more, doing less full-on reading. There's certain elements that I really do want to read through just because I think they're kind of important, as I've said before. Everything this writer puts into stuff I think is important, and I don't want to skip anything. But yes, 3 and 4 especially was very impactful. I want to say I think overall the thing that I'm getting a sense of for at least Volume 7, the thing that really so far with these chapters has hit me, and I think now that I'm technically like almost 70% through this entire volume, Volume 7 I think is important to me because it really does feel like what it's building up to is really making Rudy grow. Like him mature. Like, let's be honest, I'm jumping into it, but Soldat really does feel like the guy that's supposed to tell Rudius, grow the F up. Grow up. You are not a big boy. You are still a child and you need to grow up. And I think this is going to be a really interesting thing, if it nails it and if it's in this segment, to really tell Rudius, you're still kind of technically a child of, like, We've seen a lot of growth in Rudius, honestly. We've seen so much growth. He's matured. I think pulling away from his immaturity around women, definitely. But I really do feel like he's still stuck. Yes, he's basically praying to a pair of underwear. But if you think about it, he's still technically screwed up. He's not an adult. Even still now, he's not growing up. And I really do feel like this, especially with the whole scene with Soldat, and again, I'm getting ahead of myself, really just feel like it's somebody finally telling him, grow up. Like, you're not the only one dealing with issues. Grow up, boy. Too bad it took some jerk that's drunk to do it, but somebody finally said it. But yeah, these two chapters, 3 and 4, were really crazy for different reasons. And I think with 3 especially, it is a grow up. And with 4, it's a finding purpose, I think. Finally realizing that some things are important to you, but I'm getting ahead of myself as usual. As per usual, thank you guys for dropping by, especially those that jump into the premieres. Love seeing you guys there. Love the chat. I was super excited about last week because, well, I was very scared about last week because obviously that was our first video truly getting past the first season of the anime. I thought there would be a huge, massive drop-off of people wanting to wait until the second season came out and not wanting to read ahead. But you guys proved me wrong. It was one of our most successful premieres ever. And that excited me so much, and I think the view count still climbing, and it's still going up at an upward rate, which, again, means so much to me. Thank you guys so much for spreading the word, getting people out here, watching these videos. It means so much to me. And yes, as per usual, thanks so much to everybody that supports us through Patreon, our tips link, those that are members of the channel itself. I thank you guys so much. But with that said, as per usual, everything beyond this point is speculation. If I get into a topic and I start speculating on stuff, I don't want the actual answer to it. So please keep that in mind. I know we had a comment last week that was super spoilery that somebody noted to me. Thankfully, somebody got it handled. Thank you, Adrian. Again, just keep spoilers in check for Volume 7 up to Chapter 4. Anything beyond that, even if you know that something's pointed out, but you don't really technically know it until later on, I don't want to know. Let's enjoy it together. So with that said, let's jump into Chapter 3 and let's see if we can get through 3 and 4. Opening up Chapter 3, we have Rudius is exercising. He's getting fit, physically fit, which is interesting because, yes, typically magicians don't really need to care about their physical fitness because they're using magic. But Rudius feels like, you know, every now and then there's going to come a time where I need to be physically fit. So he is jogging, he's exercising his arms, he's exercising his legs. Yes, he even names his muscles. He's got Hulk and Hercules as his arms, and then he also named his legs Tendalos and Baskerville. Every one of those makes funny sense to me, but except Baskerville, so that must be a reference I'm missing. But yes, he's been exercising daily, and then he returns back to his inn room where he offers prayers to he made a holy shrine in the corner of his room, and he goes back and prays to it every time he returns to his room. As a timeline, several months have passed since he arrived at this town, and he's seen a lot of progress in his plans, as every time he goes to the Adventure Girls, everybody praises him, everybody's, saying hi to him, everybody seems to really enjoy his presence because his whole thing that he's set up is that he goes to the bulletin board, he sits there, he waits to see if somebody comes by as a parting, is kind of debating if they want to take a job, and then he'll offer his services. And then he'll go out there and he ended up getting the name of Quagmire because, yes, he's really good at using Quagmire. He's doing so well that a lot of parties have offered to actually have him join their parties. But yes, he wants to remain a solo adventurer. He doesn't want to get tied down. For his reward, he only asks for 10% of the reward plus 50% of whatever he can carry back. So if he gets 10% of the job's reward, and then whenever they go out, they take out grizzlies or something like that, he'll get like whatever 50% of what he's able to carry with him, he's able to kind of bank for himself. So honestly, it's very good arrangements for whoever the party is. I mean, they're getting an A-rank adventurer magician to help them out, and they're not really having to pay much. Yes, technically temporary arrangements is frowned upon by the guild, but it seems like they're letting it slide, and he kind of assumes it's because they're sympathetic for what he's going through. And yes, this is all to improve his image and for people to help him spread the word that he's looking for his mother Zenith. Which yes, a lot of party members that have been traveling to different towns have, offered to help him by spreading the word. And with this kind of working so well, he's kind of planning that over time, once he's got a good solid grounding here, he'll move to other towns across the region. Even still, he feels like he's probably gonna have to spend about a good year just to get it to where it's a point where he feels comfortable with moving on to the next town. Thinking about all this stuff, he starts praying to Roxy. One step at a time, right, Roxy? Nearby, people kind of notice, oh man, look, he's praying again. Other guy's like, leave him alone. Quagmire is a pious kid. I saw him going at it in the middle of the street the other day. So he has to kind of catch himself. Oh crap, I'm being careless. But he figured as long as he had his holy relic, he'd be all right. He could endure anything that the world threw at him. With Roxy watching over him, nothing could harm him. He was invincible. He was Mecha Rudius, the indestructible. Again, he's a child. He's still a child, and it's getting to that. But still, despite the fact of him gaining a lot of favor, there's still some people that don't like him. Quagmire Rudius, give me a damn break. That kid's so full of himself. I wonder if this is sold at right here. Now that I think about it. He kind of ignored it though, and as he's leaving, he ends up running into Sarah. She was grimacing at him like usual. What are you looking at? Nothing. Obviously, things have not changed between the two of them. You heading back to the inn or something? Yes, I just finished with my job yesterday, so I was planning on getting some rest tonight. Fine, we were just about to take a new job ourselves. Want to tag along? While Rudy's has been trying to work with a lot of different groups, kind of spreading the word better, he has been taking regular jobs with Counter Arrow. He felt comfortable with them. He asked, will you be heading out tomorrow? You're always so damn reluctant to join. If you don't want to come, you could just say so. It's not like we're begging you to help or anything. Humph. It's not like we're begging you to help or anything. Humph. She didn't say humph. Sorry about that. I'm just an indecisive person, I suppose. It takes some time for me to make up my mind about anything. Could you stop apologizing for every little thing too? It's kind of pathetic. Judging by her face, he really feels like she wasn't saying that to hurt his feelings. It was just what she actually thought. But he still had to keep up his act. The painfully polite attitude. At this point, Suzanne shows up, tells Sarah to cut it out. The whole Counter Arrow party shows up. Suzanne says, what do you say, Rudius? Coming along? Yes, I'll come with you, if you'll have me. Sounds good. Let's just pick out a job today then. Again, he was very comfortable with Counter Arrow at this point. Suzanne was a caring and considerate person. Timothy was good-natured and sociable. The other two kept to themselves, but they were nice. They were well-balanced, and combat went smoothly. It felt like he was working with them rather than helping them out. He felt like he was a part of their team. Patrice ends up pointing out one to Suzanne. Whoa, an A-rank job. Oh, they won a bunch of Snowdrake skills. I don't know. Patrice, sounds kind of risky. Yeah, but we got Rudius, right? We might as well take one that pays well. This kind of made Rudius a little bit nostalgia, remembering Edis and Rajerd standing in front of the bulletin board and picking out a job. But it was nice now because he wasn't the one making decisions. He was just kind of asked his opinion, he would give his opinion. They end up taking the quest, and we cut to the next day when Rudius is getting ready to go out to meet up with Counter Arrow. They gathered together and they headed out to the ancient ruins located 2 days south of the city. Rudius had gathered some information around the Snowdrakes. They were only found around specific ruins in the area. They had no wings and tended to be 3 to 4 meters in size. Instead of flying, they nested deep inside of caves and dungeons and hated bright light. And they always typically gathered in large groups. In packs, they were powerful creatures. They were considered S-rank threats. Being relatively docile, they didn't attack unless their nest was threatened. So adventurers didn't really find them especially dangerous. But yes, their job was to enter their home. The Galgal, damn it. Galgal and simply collects scales lying around. Their scales were good insulators and used in construction. Apart from their firmness and durability, they were beautiful, pure white, with a lovely bluish sheen in the light. You'd often find them in bedroom floors, in mansions, and local nobility. The scales could also be used for armor and shields. You wouldn't find any ordinary adventurers decked out in gear like that, though. But S-rank veterans, you'd probably have a piece or two. And the Knights of the Duchy of Basharant supposedly wore Snowdrake scale mail. Obviously, the strongest monsters in this region were pretty much stronger than anything else alive in this continent. it was easy to understand why people wanted to craft high-end equipment out of them. Of course, their job here was to obtain the scales, not to attack the nest. They wanted to avoid that, but the ruins were home to many monsters, and the drakes could choose to attack them out of nowhere. So everyone of Counter Arrow was on edge. Once they got nearby, they had a meeting. In their meeting, they decided to go over a couple possible plans and what they kind of learned about the snowdrakes. Sarah contemplating if even her worm bone arrows would even be able to pierce the snowdrake scales. Possibility of poisoning them as well. Using bright light because they didn't like it, maybe fire magic could blind them. But again, them being S-rank monsters, stuff like this probably wouldn't affect it. Sarah speaks up to criticize Rudius. You haven't said much, Rudius. Try not to screw things up in there, right? Sure, I'll do what I can. Seriously, you better. I mean, my arrows might not even work on those things. If one of them gets close to you, we might not be able to help you. It was obvious that Sarah was nervous for this job. Obviously, she was at a huge disadvantage. But this was normal in this business. Few could accomplish much solo. If you got cocky, it was only a matter of time before someone showed you up. It's pretty much hinting at something. Staying humble was the way to go. Sarah was young and probably hadn't experienced much setback. However, it seemed like Sarah was more worried about what would happen to the other party members if she herself couldn't perform her role. I would probably say she's probably still reeling from what happened with the Grizzlies. It seemed like her own life didn't seem to register. But still, the others would step in to help. They would cross that road when it came. Rudy speaks up, don't worry about it too much, Sarah. Our job is to pick up the scales, not fight snowdrakes. We're basically cleaning up their shed hair. Tim speaks up, he's exactly right. Let's try not to fight them at all if possible. They all agreed that if things got worse, they would flee. Of course, Mimir has to speak up. You're real good at running away, Patrice. I'll give you that much. To which Timothy kind of broke the tension by speaking up and saying, don't be modest, Mimir. You're our best sprinter by a long shot. Again, I think this is kind of telling for what happens later. I didn't realize how much they were joking about later stuff in this early segment until I reread this. With the meeting over, everyone stood up and got serious once again. It was time to enter the ruins. They noticed at the entrance there looked like there was some footprints, but they seemed like they looked like they were about 6 days old. But still, there was a chance that they possibly double-booked this job. As they entered the cave, the chit-chat stopped. There wasn't many monsters at the beginning, some giant centipede-looking creatures that were easily handled by Suzanne. However, because how narrow the area was, and the fact they had these ice patches, if they got swarmed, they would have to retreat. They had to stay alert. At some point, Sarah ended up losing her footing, but Brutus, using his eye, was able to get in there and catch her. Setting her down, she got angry at him and said, what are you doing? Just trying to grope me? Honestly, all he felt was the rigid leather of her chest protector. It's not as if it excited him. He wasn't the innocent boy he once was. Still, he ultimately decided it was best to just apologize. After traveling for a while in a two-person row formation, they finally reached a large open space. It was bright lit as if it was outside. The roof was covered in patches of something that emitted a bluish-white glow. Ahead of them was a sheer rock face that sloped down into darkness beneath them. He figured it was some sort of underground lake or river. He had a really bad feeling about what was below. Further down the path was a place that they were seeking, the Galgal Ruins, a massive fort-like structure. Timothy spoke up. This place served as a fortress during the First Human-Demon War. Apparently, it was constructed by one of the 5 greatest demon kings of the era. They called him Largun Hargun, the Subterranean. By all accounts, he was a god-tier earth mage. He would regularly raise fortresses like this one in places no human could possibly find them, then create tunnels to the surface so the forces could launch surprise attacks. Rita speaks up, no kidding. You're really knowledgeable, Timothy. Well, the fighting between humanity and the subterranean demon king was a very fierce one in this region. So we have a lot of stories about the war that were passed down through generations. I remember quite a few of them from my childhood. Reese thinks to himself, man, even though this is like folk history, it seemed plausible. It's crazy to think that anyone could be able to fight against something like that. Just thinking about like having these fortresses and stuff, and then suddenly they attack from below. Like you couldn't even protect yourself from them. Suzanne questions, didn't you say you grew up in Renoa, Timothy? That's right, I was born in a nameless village there, and spent my formative years in the city of Shiraya. You might know it for its University of Magic. Eventually I headed down to Asra to pursue my dreams of becoming a great adventurer, which is how I ended up where I am today. A much humbler man. Regis thought to himself, the kingdom of Renoa, right? Kind of figure I'll be going there eventually. Suddenly, Sarah yells, we're under attack. They were giant bats. Everyone shifted into formation, leaving it to the back line while the vanguard held the defensive line. Sarah struck one down with an arrow, knocking it right through its head. Regis used blast wind to tear through its wings, and Timothy used flamethrower, knocking out 2. Suddenly, they were caught off guard by this gigantic frog that just leapt from the depths down below and just consumed the bats. Suzanne says, let's try not to fall down there, shall we? And Sarah nodded vehemently. Apparently, he knows that she had goosebumps on her skin, kind of assumes that Sarah's not a frog person, which he kind of figures that she probably should get over that because he met plenty of frog-faced people over in the Demon Continent. After this, they continued onward. Galgal was massive. It was 5 stories high, wider than your average middle school. While it wasn't the biggest structure that Rudius has seen in the world, the thought that it was underground was impressive. They entered the ruins from what seemed like a side door. Rudius was caught up in the spectacle of it, something he only seen before in illustrations from fantasy games. Sarah had to snap him out of it. He honestly had to focus. He had to get his job done, get back to his lonely room. He shook his head. Still, as he entered the ruins, he kind of questioned how old these ruins were. Being there since the first human-demon war, he's seen buildings from the Demon Continent like this, but obviously this one was older, and made a slightly different impression from what he's seen before. The height made sense, but the hallways were super narrow. Maybe it was made that way deliberately to make it more easier to defend. As Timothy was guiding him, he peeked over and looked at the actual map that they had. Timothy said, "Good lord, what were the demons thinking when they designed this place?" Yes, based on the map, it looked like it was a maze. Like some kid scribbled his preferred labyrinth. Based on the statue later on, I wonder if it was Kishirika that designed the place. Rudius speaks up, "Well, they're not really built like us, you know. This might have been more convenient for them somehow." Timothy said, "I suppose you're right." Rudius thought there might have been a variety of demons that were in this place. Flyers, crawlers that go across the walls. That would explain the holes in the ceiling and the layout. This could probably give them a huge advantage. Still, Rudius thought it's been eerily quiet. There's been no monsters attacking. But then suddenly, it's like every time he thinks this, something happens. Stop flagging things, Rudius. But suddenly, a wind passed them. Mimir yells out, "We're under attack. Where are they?" "At your feet." Suddenly, Rudius noticed the bones that were under their feet started to actually form into a skeleton. Additionally, ahead of them looked like some sort of ghost wearing a robe. "We've got skeletons and a wraith, boss. Draw them in, Patrice." They end up being surrounded, having some attacking from behind and some ahead along with the wraith. With nobody guarding the back line, Sarah ended up pushing back Rudius and drawing a large knife. They knew what they were dealing with. Skeletons were best to be dealt with blunt weapons. So Rudius chose to use stone cannon, and Timothy followed up with him. It kind of notes the fact that Rudius was able to decimate 2 of these skeletons while Timothy was only able to knock out 1. So Rudius is like, that's a win for me. Wait, I shouldn't be thinking about that right now. But still, it didn't stop them. The skeletons would reform themselves. As long as the wraith was there alive, it would keep bringing them back. The best way to handle this situation was to use holy magic on the wraith itself, which thankfully, they had Mimir. "I call upon thee, God who blesses the land which nurtures us. Deliver divine punishment to those foolish enough to defy the natural ways. Exorcist straight." Rudius turned to see a ball of light smack the wraith's body, reducing it to a small motes of light that faded. And of course, with that, all the skeletons just dropped. Rudius was shocked. It was the first time he'd ever seen divine magic. And additionally, ghosts. To which Timothy notes that, yeah, that was the second time he'd seen a wraith himself. The first time his party was completely clueless on how to handle it. And that got one of their friends killed. It was a very painful lesson. And of course, this was before he even formed Counter Arrow. And because of this loss, this was a scenario that he actually had them practice. So they knew exactly what to do in this situation. Which is evident in the idea that, Sarah took the back line. They knew to kind of hold off the skeletons while Mimir took out the wraith. Again, a very painful lesson, but something that helped them in the future. Sarah had to shush the 2 of them. It was making it difficult for her to find threats. At some point, they emerged to a more open space. A hallway 100 meters long, a crumbled set of stairs that led to a second floor. Both sides were lined with stone sculptures. The floor was lined with white scales, the snowdrake scales they were looking for. According to research, this was a route for the snowdrakes themselves. They would go out to their hunting grounds, they would come back, and this was where their nest was at. And during the time they would kind of travel through this section, they would stop and groom themselves. So that's why there was white scales everywhere. Suzanne speaks up. "Beyond this hall, we'd be stepping into the snowdrake's territory. Don't go any further than the last statue. Is that clear, everyone?" At this point, Mimir and Patrice start to collect the scales into their backpacks. At the same time, Sarah, Rudius, and Timothy were on watch. Of course, the main threat being snowdrakes passing through this area, but they also had giant bats, red-eyed moles, and wraiths. Obviously, if the snowdrakes showed up, they would take cover and hide. Other threats would just be eliminated. With how easy things were going, Rudius didn't really feel like this was an A rank. Again, Rudius, stop flagging. Stop flagging things, Rudius. With how things were going easily, he didn't think this was an A-rank job, but the thought of that made him feel uneasy, so he didn't want to let his guard down. Rudius looked down the direction of the snowdrake's nest. The last statue depicted a voluptuous woman with her legs planted apart, wearing nothing but hot pants, a breast protector, and a cape. She held her hands at her hips, and for some reason, there were chains on them. Between her legs, there was a door. Rudius realized the clothing depicted was familiar. Was it supposed to be Kishirishu? Maybe it was an exaggeration. It didn't look like her size. I don't know. I guess at this point, Rudius hasn't really gotten the clue that she's trying to regain her power, and it would assume that she gets bigger the more she grows. Well, we know because what Body Gotti said. She's not big enough for me. Yet. Rudius stopped himself and made himself focus again. Still, he was no longer turned on by the sight of breasts. Maybe because he actually felt some real ones. His innocence was gone forever. What's that sound? Timothy shouted. Suddenly, Rudius heard a piercing cry from the distance. I've got a bad feeling about this one, boss. Get ready for combat, everyone. Push the bags to the side. They bunched up into a tight formation. A large horde was coming based on the sound. It doesn't sound like they're heading our way. I think we should probably keep gathering, but quickly. It made sense. It didn't seem like anything was coming their way. Perhaps something else had the snowdrakes whipping in a frenzy. I think we should finish up too. Yeah, I'm on board. We're almost done anyways, right? Honestly, Rudius wanted to leave, but Counter Arrow was on the hook for the fee for failing the mission. All right then, we'll gather the scales a little bit longer, but let's be quick about it. Rudius kept watching down the hall. The cries got louder and more violent. It echoed from all directions. Rudius thought about possibly sealing off the entrances with earth magic, but no, it probably caused them to flood in. He had to calm himself. Anything he did could possibly backfire. As the shrieks seemed to calm down, Rudius kind of relaxed a little bit. Oh crap, they're on us! In an instant, a flood of sleek white shapes exploded from past the statue with ferocious speed. They were like pure white geckos. Snowdrakes. With his line of sight, all he could see was 6, but he knew there was more. But when they got to them, they stopped. Timothy was shocked and couldn't even call for a retreat. But the drakes were the same. They froze with their eyes wide open. Still, they opened their mouths, halfway, threatening with their fangs. Time felt like it stood still. Run, everyone shot to the entrance. God, not again. Rudius summoned an earth fortress wall, but unfortunately they just kind of crawled around it and above it. It did nothing. Rudius spun back again, realizing it wasn't working, and used Blizzard Storm. But this was a mistake. The ice gust pushed through them, and thick spears shot up from the ground. However, they quickly maneuvered around them. This was bad. He couldn't retreat. He had to fight. But could he beat them? Probably not. At this point, he grabbed the fabric in his pocket as they bore down on him. But just then, an arrow zipped right past him and hit the nearest drake in the eye. Timothy casted flamethrower that roared past him as well. The front flank, a counter arrow, rushed in front of Rudius. These things aren't just after us. Just hit the ones that are charging our way to knock them off course. Gotcha. More coming from the left. Rudius was dumbfounded. They came back for him. He wasn't even a member of their party. They really did come to save him. A warm feeling swelled up inside of Rudius. He had to force it back. He wasn't ready for it. It's kind of sad. It's like this is the first moment that Rudius really realizes you kind of mean something to these people. And having that feeling of being wanted by somebody just kind of throws him off. But he realizes, I can't do this right now. Sarah snapped, don't just stand there, moron. You're fighting too. But they were right. The snowdrakes weren't after them. They seemed to be treating them as obstacles. Most of them were opting to crawl on the walls or the ceiling, so they would focus on the ones that were charging at them 2 or 3 at a time. Damage them enough that they would kind of change courses. Suddenly a spray of blood shot into the air from deep within the snowdrake wave. Someone was leaping fiercely across the battlefield. It wasn't just one, but another small shape appeared in the back of the hall using fire magic. The drakes began to rush from the chamber frantically. What, is that all you got? The man roared again as the group came in to support him. With that, Counter Arrow decided to press their attack. And once the dust settled, Rudius observed all the drakes. None of them were moving. A vast majority was killed by the party that joined midway. In the center of the party was a man in a dark blue coat that appeared to be a swordsman. He approached Rudius's party with a glowering expression. Hey there, I'm Timothy of Counter Arrow. Thank you so much for your... Ugh. Scowling fiercely, the man punched Timothy, sending him sprawling to the ground. Suzanne and Sarah drew their weapons. Don't give me that dopey smile, asshole. You've got some guts stealing our prey like that. He shot glares at everyone in the party. His look was nearly murderous. Suzanne spoke up. Stealing your prey? Are you joking? These things attacked us out of nowhere. You got us caught up in this. Oh, please, you snuck in from behind and tried to grab these scales while we were doing all the work. We didn't even know anyone else was working a job here. We told the whole damn city we'd be here. Well, we didn't hear anything about it. Everyone in the man's party was obviously upset, but it felt like everyone was talking past each other. Rudius finally recognized them. Stepped Leader, what kind of freaking name is Stepped Ladder? Stepped Ladder. An S-rank adventure party. Now I want to stop here because this is kind of interesting is like, okay, so Rudius is A rank and then Counter Arrow is B rank. It's so surprising to realize just how different we're looking at here for at least skill and the ability to take these things down. Again, this entire chapter, they've been pointing out the fact that snowdrakes are like impervious. Like arrows will deflect off of them. Their scales are super strong. That's why they make armor out of them. That's why they're insulating. And yet Rudius and his party were literally like frantically running away from this stuff. And they were standing there lying against like 2 or 3, but they were terrified they're going to die. And then this S rank, again, 1 rank up from Rudius. Rudius can be an S rank if you wanted to, actually. But it would to be honest, it was probably partly because of Reserve. Let's be truthful. But even the B rank to S rank, these guys came in and was just shredding this stuff up. That's the difference in power. Now, granted, you can think about it. If you're going from B to A and then you get to S, it doesn't mean that your power just stops. Your skills can keep going beyond that. But still, it was kind of interesting to kind of note how just different this was. Again, this group was what was causing all that noise. They were in the nest. They were just destroying everything. And then they came in here and they destroyed everything else again. So it's crazy. They were a highly competent bunch, associated with the prominent clan Thunderbolt. Rudius had heard that they were the strongest single party in the entire city of Rosenberg. The leader, this man, was Soldat Heckler, a highly skilled swordsman of the sword god style. Oh, Rudius said. Everyone looked at him. Rudius? Do you know something about this? Well, come to think of it, I did hear something about Step Leader taking on a S-rank job in the guild the other day. I think they were going out to exterminate a large pack of snowdrakes that appeared in the Ilbron cave. Suzanne speaks up. Ilbron cave? What? That's a full days away from here. Soldat scowled furiously. What the hell? This is Ilbron cave. Are you drunk? We're in the Galgal ruins. Calm down, Suzanne, Timothy said as he got to his feet. Timothy, are you right? Yes. He was kind enough to take it easy on me. Sarah, lower your bow, please. I think I might have a rough idea what happened here. I remember hearing that a large number of monsters emerged from the Ilbron cave some time ago, and a party was sent to fight them, but was wiped out. The sole survivor reported that they found a nest of snowdrakes deep inside the cave. The Ilbron cave was about a day's travel from Rosenberg, with mostly D and E rank threats. You can find huge lumps of rock salt inside of it, so adventurers sometimes ventured to it to retrieve some. With the wiping out of this group of adventurers and the report of the snowdrakes, it seems like the Adventure Guild decided to raise it from a B rank to an S rank job. And the only group in Rosenberg that would be able to take it on was Stepped Leader, a group typically focused on exploring labyrinths. Timothy continued, I thought it was strange that we encountered so few monsters on the way down here, but now it all makes sense. Some natural event must have happened to create a passage between Galgal ruins and the Ilbron cave, and the creatures from Galgal rushed over into the cave. Which Rudius thought to himself, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If the Galgal ruins were a fortress created by a demon king, and he tunneled in all different directions, Ilbron cave might have actually been one of those actual tunnels. And maybe some link in between the two of them broke at some point, but then reopened. It's kind of crazy to think about all these ruins and these caves could possibly all just be something that some demon king created a long time ago. And now they're pretty much just places and nests for different monsters that people have to deal with now. So what, you're saying that we came here on separate jobs? That's right. I can confirm it with the guild if you want. Soldat grimaced, shook his head, spat on the ground. Well, damn. My bad for punching you out of nowhere then. That's alright, you were worked up after the battle, and we both misunderstood the situation. I'm sorry as well. Rudius honestly felt like there was nothing that he had to apologize for. But Timothy had his plan of success, and stuck to it. Always smile, right? Still, these are our prey. You guys get 1 corpse, got that? Timothy replied, of course. Apparently it was an unwritten rule that if you got another party mixed up in a fight with monsters, that party got to take a single corpse. This sort of prevented people from deliberately blundering their way into other people's fights just to get loot. There's no shared loot in this world, alright? With that, Soldat and his team left back into the depths. It wasn't fair, but it didn't feel great knowing that they'd profit off of their kills. Plus, they wouldn't have been in danger if it wasn't for them in the first place. With that, they gathered their skills, and a few days later, they arrived back at the Adventure Guild. Out front, there was just piles of scales and other materials that obviously Step Leader had already sold off. Inside, they found Step Leader was boasting their exploits, about how the cave and the ruins linked, and how the Drakes would have at some point rampaged into the city if it wasn't for them. Rudius and Counter Arrow wasn't wanting to stick around. They cut straight to the counter and turned in. After splitting their rewards and the scales, Rudius decided that he was going to hold on to the scales until the price eventually went back up, because yes, they just got a whole bunch of stuff flooding into the market. As Rudius was going to part ways with everybody, Sarah spoke out and extended a hand. Why don't you come to the after party for once? Rudius says, huh? You know, and the after party. We're just going to the bar. Rudius was a bit shocked. Typically, adventurers would celebrate after returning home, obviously to celebrate their success and the fact that they survived. But Counter Arrow knew that he had a habit of returning back to his room after an adventure. He wanted to get back, offer his prayers, and then go straight to bed. He had to let Roxy know that he was trying his best. Again, he's like stuck in this routine. It's kind of sad how bad he's stuck in this kind of routine. But for some reason, Rudius found himself nodding. Okay, I guess I'll come along. Seriously? What? Am I not welcome after all? Don't be stupid. Come on, let's go. Everyone cheerfully slapped his shoulder and pushed him down the road. They decided to pick a bar that they don't typically go to. It's obvious that they were trying to avoid running into step leader. Rudius opted for some diluted fruit juice instead of liquor, which Sarah openly questioned. But Timothy was having the same thing and claimed that it was important to just have fun, though that didn't seem to stop anybody from criticizing Timothy like they usually do because he's obviously a lightweight. Still, Timothy was the first sober adventurer that Rudius had ever met. It was rare. This was a celebration, because obviously the situation that they were just in could have easily landed one of them, at least one of them, dead. Sarah pointed out that Rudius himself was a lucky one, which is true, but he pointed out that they protected him. Rudius decided to stand and bow in gratitude, to which Sarah just kind of passed the thanks off to Suzanne and Timothy. But Suzanne didn't let her have it. Suzanne didn't let her sneak out of it. She pointed out the fact that, yes, Sarah was the first one to rush back to Rudius. It wasn't them. She unfortunately even points out that Mimur said that it was a lost cause. Hey, shut up, Suzanne. Suzanne dodged her attack. Look, you helped us out last time, right? I don't like owing people, that's all. Rudius was trying to kind of avert his eyes from Sarah, but ended up catching Mimur's glance instead. Hey, I'm grateful too, for the record. It's not like I wanted to leave you behind or anything, but you know how it is, right? Rudius is like, yes, of course. Rudius knew that Mimur's assessment was reasonable, and acknowledges that Mimur also jumped out in front of him in the end. Suzanne kind of lightened the mood by cheering about the fact that, yes, they packed their wallets, everybody's alive, it's a good day. But everyone couldn't shake their frustration about running into step leader, acting like heroes even though the army would have handled it if the Drakes actually came to town. Then there was the issue that he punched Timothy. In the end though, Timothy managed to keep things peaceful. The last thing Counter Arrow needed was resentment festering into a fight between stepped leader. As they were sitting there complaining, Rudius didn't want to join in. He wasn't a fan of trash-talking people behind their backs. He had plenty of experience with that in his previous life. He knows that, yes, I was a terrible person in my past life. I don't want to get into that. He assumed that Soldat had his reasons. Yes, he had a crappy personality, but he got things done and he was working hard, which is probably why his party members shook their heads and went along with his nonsense. He messed up, but Rudius wasn't ready to label him an irredeemable piece of garbage. I like this because it's, again, Rudius reflecting on his past life, how nasty he was. He was constantly bickering about other people, and yes, it was the reason why it was because people treated him so terribly when he was at school, and that kind of just turned into this smoldering of toxicity. But even still, he's willing to allow himself to acknowledge that people have reasons for what they do. That Soldat probably isn't a full-on 100% jerk. That he probably had a reason for being... Let's be honest, he thought that he was in that cave, and he was frustrated by somebody leeching off of him, and somebody that he had to, in the end, save their butts. Yes, he jumped to a conclusion, but Rudius understands you gotta really kind of think about the fact that everybody has their reasons. And I do give a lot of respect for Rudius being able to do that. And yes, the rest of them have their reasons for being frustrated, especially Timothy for getting punched, but in the end, they're alive, and Soldat acknowledged that he screwed up, and he probably had reasons for being so upset and worked up. But yes, with all that thought, Rudius decided to keep it all to himself. He didn't want to speak up. In the end, he liked the fact that he went with them to this after party. He needed some fun in his life to keep him going. At least he's willing to kind of acknowledge the fact that he enjoys his company with them. And then the door swung open, and 3 men stepped in. One was Soldat Heckler. Hey there! The drunken man stopped in front of the table and slammed his fist down onto it. Suzanne spoke up. You want something? Look, I was all worked up back there in the cave, alright? So I thought I'd come to set things straight with you people. I guess I screwed up back there. Sorry about that. I didn't realize what was going on, you know? To Rudius' surprise, though, his words were actually apologetic. The members of Counter Arrow looked at each other in confusion. At this point, Soldat frowned and jabbed a finger out at Timothy. That said, I don't like your face, man. You smile too much, damn it. It's pathetic. You just let a guy punch you instead of fighting back? And then you don't even complain about it? I hate that kind of... Maybe you were trying to calm things down, fine. But sometimes, a man's gotta fight. Yes, I suppose you're probably right. Suzanne's always telling me the same thing. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, you do that. You keep that in mind. With that, Soldat smacked Timothy in the shoulder. Timothy smiled with an awkward face, and then scratched his head. Nodding in satisfaction, Soldat abruptly turned his direction to Rudius. Quagmire. Yes? Timothy is one thing, but I can't stand you, kid. What the hell is wrong with you, huh? Why are you so obsessed with what other people think of you? God, and your grin is so damn creepy. Like, is that seriously supposed to be a smile? Try a little harder, kid. We can see the contempt in your eyes. Do you think you're the saddest little boy in all the world or something? Now listen up, Quagmire. You're nothing but come on, Soldat, give it a rest. Screw you, this kid thinks no one in the world has it worse than him. I don't know what the hell happened to you, Quagmire, but you're depressing. You don't have the guts to face your own problems. Where do you get off acting like you're some hotshot lone wolf? You think the rules don't apply to you or something? Well, I've had it with your You make me sick. His words were like daggers into Rudius. He was shaking all over. His hands clenched tightly in his lap. His throat quivered as he spoke. Sorry about that. I didn't know I was bothering you with my presence. I'll do my best not to be in the same room with you again. Soldat slammed his fist on the table and broke it in half. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Are you trying to piss me off, kid? You're always like this. All you ever do is advertise yourself. And then you act like you're too good for the money. You having fun acting like a martyr, huh? We all need cash to survive, damn it. At this point, Rudius kept quiet. Nothing was gonna help at this point. Finally, one of Soldat's guys stepped forward. I'm sorry. He's had a few too many. Let's go, Sol. Shut up. Come on, Quagmire. Throw a damn punch, why don't you? You're pissed off, right? Take a swing at me. Stop sitting in your patch of mud oinking about how sad you are. Act like a man for once. Rudius just kept his gaze down, waiting for the storm to pass. Sol, back off. You're taking this too far. Let me go, damn it. Hey, Quagmire. You having fun over there, huh? If you hate your life that much, go die in a ditch somewhere. At least that way, I won't have to see your face ever again. At this point, Soldat's friends started to drag him out. Rudius just kept still, holding his holy idol in his pocket, his mind completely blank. He stayed that way until Soldat was gone, and Sarah had wiped the soup off of him. Sarah muttered, that guy's the worst. All Rudius could do was just slowly nod. Again, I like this segment because this is like freaking grow up. I'm not against Soldat. Like, Am I alone on this one? Am I the only one that's like, I think he needs to hear this? Like, I think he's super mean, but I think Soldat's the one person willing to say the harsh things that Rudius needs to hear. Again, all he's doing is we know why Rudius is doing what he's doing. He's trying to get word out to his mother. But we also know the other side of Rudius, that he is a moping piece of junk. All he's doing is just doing jobs, getting the word out, go back to his inn, sleep around, pray to his altar, go back out, spread the word of himself. He's trying to get famous. But the problem is, and this is similar to what we kind of mentioned in the last chapters, was like, he's technically trying to die. He finally gained reason to live, but he's not quite there yet. Like, he's just established that he needs to live on. But from other people's perspective, especially from Soldat's perspective, they're probably seeing that he's not really all there. And yes, his fake little grin and smile, this facade he's giving, people probably see through it. They probably know he's faking his smiles. And Soldat's the first person to speak up and say, stop it. You gloomy little kid. Grow up. I think he needs to hear this stuff. He needs to hear somebody finally tell him to wait. And I don't think Counter Arrow would say anything. And I think even Sarah in this little next segment kind of acknowledges it. Yeah, his little creepy grin's annoying. But he's not a bad kid. Soldat, all he sees is that he's an annoying little kid. He doesn't see that Rudius steps forward and protects people, whatever. And so he easily gets set off by this. So he's the first person that keeps seeing him do this and finally snapped and told him what he needed to hear. Grow up. Stop glooming around. Wake up. And now that I've read into the next chapter, which I'm at this point wondering if I'm going to be able to get into, we see that. We see that he's finally going, I need to step forward. It's not because Soldat told me I need to step forward. It's not because of what he said. At this point, we cut to Sarah's perspective. She was burning with anger as she went back to her room. She was so mad. Tore her stuff off, put her stuff down, and just flopped on the bed. That guy is the worst. From her perspective, Soldat didn't know how hard Timothy fought every day for him. Criticizing him? His smile was his weapon. Suzanne told her that a long time ago. What right did Soldat have to insult anyone? Sure, everyone has to stand up and fight at times, but a leader's job is to prevent pointless fights and to keep people safe. Soldat sure as hell wasn't doing that. What did he plan to do if they fought? Was he gonna kill everybody and then just get away with it? He was arrogant and didn't even block off the exits. For all Sarah knew, he was a jerk that needed to work on his leadership skills. And why pick on Rudius of all people? He fought bravely to hold off enemies so that they can get away. Soldat didn't know that. He hadn't seen Rudius in action. Again, I kind of mentioned that earlier. He doesn't see that part of Rudius. He just sees the gloomy kid that you agree is annoying. Which, yes, she says right here. Sure, Rudius could get on Sarah's nerves. That fake smile that he made her grimace every single time. And at this point, Sarah realizes that she's taking Rudius' side. Why was she doing that? She thought she hated Rudius. No. She figures it's because she hated Soldat more. That had to be it. Unlike Soldat, Rudius never put them down and treated Timothy and the others with respect. He was a talented mage, but never acted like he was too good for them. He always tagged along for jobs and bought them time to run when things got dangerous. Okay, hold on. That's not right. Even though Rudius was a noble at birth, he didn't act like it. But that was enough. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And she hated rich kids that pretended to be adventurers. Sarah's hometown was destroyed by the arrogance of nobility. They never protected them from monsters. Good job, Paimon. Damn it, Paimon. I got to say damn it, Paimon again. It was their fault her mother and father were dead. So now we get clarification why she freaking hates the nobility so freaking much. It wasn't just because of bratty kids joining as adventurers. It's because they literally let her family die. The men who were on duty to protect them let them die. She could never forget that despair. She had good reasons for hating nobility, and Rudius was nobility. But again, she catches herself. Rudius fought for us, didn't he? He fought against the Grizzlies. He fought against the Snowdrakes. He never ran away. He wasn't even a member of Counter Arrow, and he tried to save them. So when she seen him fighting for Counter Arrow, she had to run back and save him. She didn't want to see him die. It's not like she ever wanted him to die or anything, but she surprised herself. If she hated him that much, why did she go back and save him? She ugged in frustration. This sucks. Lately, when she looked at Rudius, it felt like the ground underneath her was shifting. Literally everything that she's ever thought of with her mindset is suddenly breaking. Nobility sucks. Why suddenly is a nobility good? It's breaking her. She hated nobility, but she couldn't bring herself to hate him. She didn't know how to deal with it. Nothing made sense. But at the end of the day, yeah, all right, fine. I guess I'll have to admit it. I don't hate Rudius. He was a child of some rich jerk, but there was more to him than that. I didn't hate him. That was enough. That was as far as I could go. I definitely didn't like him or anything. Not hating someone is different than not liking them, obviously. I don't like Rudius one bit. With that fact safely established, Sarah went to sleep. I really like this insight into Sarah, and I like how they're gradually doing it rather than waiting till like way later for like they did with Edis, because we're seeing that gradual process of her mindset and really getting insight into how she's thinking. And like I said earlier and joked about earlier, it's nice to see that, yes, there's a good reason why she hates nobility so much. Again, Paimon, the nobility left her people to die. Her parents died because they did not help and save them and protect them. So she has a good reason for it. It's not just because she has to deal with so many snotty kids. It's because they caused the death of her family. So it's nice to see that finally that they're acknowledging that. Now, I don't think it's Soldat's actions that really changed her mind about Rudius. I think she was seeing that she was okay with him. It's just she didn't want to accept it. And now this whole thing is finally pushing her to finally accept it. Finally, she sees an adventurer and a nobility. And typically, she's on the adventurer side because she's always been at their sides, and they always have to deal with the crappy nobility. And now she's realizing this guy who's an adventurer is just as nasty. So now I can start to agree with the fact that I'm okay with this nobility, which is kind of funny, but still. But no, a great chapter. Like I said, I really love the scene with Soldat, and I kind of went into that in detail already. I just love that he's just basically the one to finally tell Rudius to grow up. That's a lot of that one. I probably have to censor a bunch of that. And I think that, like I said, in chapter 4, that kind of starts showing signs of as he's starting to realize, I got to stop half-assing things. I got to start doing a proper way of things, focus more, and yes, technically grow up. And the whole stuff around the ruins, I wanted to kind of cover a lot of that stuff because I think it's fascinating. The idea of a demon king that was going through this area, creating fortresses underground, and yes, how that technically created the ecosystem that they're in now. These caves are regular places of gatherings of monsters that people have to go in, get resources, kill the monsters. They flood out every now and then. And yes, they're interconnecting because it's a possibility they were all interconnected to begin with, which I think is super fascinating to kind of start building the physical world itself, not the politics and stuff, the physical world building that it's doing with that, which I find really fascinating. And yes, technically, we did get aside the fact that there was a Kishirika statuette down there. And again, I'm still kind of wondering, statue, and I'm still kind of wondering if that labyrinth was designed by her, because I could totally see her doing that. He's like a little kid was scribbling this map, and I'm like, I wonder if they're saying that that's totally her. I could totally see that. It's good stuff. It was just all that stuff I eat up, and I loved it. Let's dive into chapter 4. Several months passed, and it's now winter. It was harsh. With supplies tied up, most lived on beans, pickled vegetables, and meats. After 6 months, Rudius felt like there was little he could do to improve his plans. He was well known to the veterans, and he offered his assistance to younger adventurers. He even had collaborators within Rosenberg's adventurer parties asking about Zenith on his behalf when they visited other villages. Even merchants who worked with adventurers were spreading the word as well. He also left a good impression on a store specializing in magical implements, who said they would help spread the word as payment for his help. Despite his efforts, radio silence. It's likely she was in a different area altogether, or she was probably already... He had to stop himself. He's thinking about it again. On his way to the Adventure Guild, he assumed that he'd probably leave town this next spring. During the winter, he noticed the fact that most adventurers were taking jobs within the town itself. You didn't really want to travel in the blizzard, so most people kind of did jobs here, or took jobs to go to nearby towns where they would stay there. As per usual, Rudius took his usual seat next to the bulletin board, and he would wait there and wait for the adventurers to come in and note that they can't take a job, and he would help them out. And then yes, today, Soldat approached the board, clicking his tongue. Ever since the whole fiasco at the bar, this guy was harboring some ill contempt for Rudius. Rudius tried to honestly avoid him, but every time he seen him, he would show that contempt to him. And yes, sadly, since it's winter, they couldn't be going labyrinth diving, so he's seen him a lot. Looking for leftovers again? I have my reasons for doing this. What reasons? Everything you do is half-assed. Rudius was getting frustrated. He was doing everything he needed to do. What part of him was unpleasant? He wished he would just keep out of his business. Thankfully, Soldat didn't linger long. Whenever he would come in, he would just grab his quest and just leave promptly. It seemed as if Soldat was doing his utmost to avoid Rudius as well. He wasn't actively coming after him. But still, if he seen him, he'd tell Rudius he was garbage and doing everything half-assed. So maybe he was trying to discourage Rudius from coming to the guild at all, which kind of makes you start to wonder, the fact that they're pointing this out makes me wonder if they're going to later on get into the fact that Soldat knew some snotty kid that got himself killed and he's frustrated. So he's trying, it's going to turn to that. He's going to turn to Soldat's trying to save Rudius. Get him, you're doing things half-assed, you're going to die. Stop doing this. Get a different job. Typically, if Counter Arrow was around, they would come by and intervene, but they've been gone for 2 days now. Rudius felt lonely. At this point, Rudius decided nothing's happening. I'm going to just go ahead and take some unranked quests to help around the town. There was a lot of them that people would have set up for, basically shoveling up snow and stuff. Perhaps doing this didn't absolve him from Soldat calling him a so-called half-ass. But still, Soldat's words instilled some need for him to do something. Again, he's helping him. He's helping him in the end. He's a mean dude, but he's helping him in the end. He brought the job up to the receptionist, which, honestly, it surprised him. He told her that he wanted to change the pace. After taking his job, he went to what pretty much amounted to a snow collecting center. People took snow there, and his job was to basically take this scoop and pack it towards the back. Then when he was signaled, he had to go to this magical device, pour his mana into it, and it would basically kind of melt all the snow. He took note that pretty much everybody was getting involved. You had adults, you had children. The children looked like they were more enthusiastic than adults, probably because they were getting some money out of it. And at some point, he noticed a little girl take a tumble. As he went to her side to help her out, he noticed that she kept grabbing her foot and looked frightened. He took her shoe off and noticed that she was badly frostbitten. So he used his healing on her, and thankfully, it kind of got rid of the frostbite. However, her face turned despair. Apparently, she thought that she was going to have to pay him for healing her. Which, yes, Rudius had heard there's lowlifes out there that would go out and heal people without their asking, and then they would force them into slavery, sell them off to pay off whatever they were charging them. But no, he basically reassured her he didn't need anything, and so she ran off. At some point, he got the signal to go use the device. And sure enough, it melted everything down into the ground, and everybody was cheering in excitement. And so he decided to come in and join in with them. Like, something's cool happening, I better clap with them. But no, apparently, they weren't expecting him to be able to melt that much. The manager of the area said that he figured that he would only take out maybe a third of it. But now, yes, his job was done. He couldn't pay him for any more than that. But the manager was hoping that if he ever had some free time to come back and help them out. As he's going to leave, he hears, "Mr. Magician!" The girl that he'd helped earlier flagged him down. She asked what his name was, and he gave her a name. Before she ran off to the other children, and they were whispering to each other before they ran off into the alleyway, she gave a bow before she did. He usually didn't like to hear his name being used in gossip and whispering, but it really made him feel good. Perhaps it was a good thing to make a name for himself for the children in the area. Returning to the guild, Rudius spotted Suzanne and Timothy and Patrice. For the first time ever, he decided to confront them. "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh, it's Rudius. Did something happen?" "Yeah, it's Murmur and Sarah." "Did the two of them get married or something?" "So, you crack those kind of jokes too, huh?" I'm sorry. Do you mind if I ask about it?" Timothy went silent. Suzanne finally spoke up. "They're dead." "Oh, I see." This is one of those moments when I read this part, I'm like, I guess I'm staying up to read more. What? Damn it. It's kind of one of those gut punch moments when you read something like this and suddenly it's like, what are we doing now? What's going on? Rudius couldn't digest the idea of them being gone. It wasn't the first time something like this happened to him. I mean, death in companions and adventurers is a regular thing in this world. Even so, it was depressing. He wasn't particularly close to them, but they shared meals and they overcame death together. He couldn't help but feel sad that they lost their lives. But there was nothing that can be done. Sooner or later, all adventurers would die. Timothy finally spoke up. No, Mimir aside, Sarah isn't dead yet. Okay, Jansu. John's sad as Mimir's. We're all excited because at least one of them is alive. Mimir was going to ditch him. I'm joking. Timothy continues, we were just separated from her during battle. It's not like we saw her corpse. So maybe if we just searched for a little more, we could have... Give it up. You couldn't see anything in the forest. Not in that blizzard. We're better off considering her dead. But I said give it up. If we stayed there any longer to search, we would have been dead too. We knew that. That's why we obeyed your orders. It seemed as if Timothy had given the order to retreat. Now, he was regretting that decision. Patrice spoke up. Timothy, you don't have to take all the blame. We could have ignored your orders back then, but we agreed to come back here. We're equally responsible. Suzanne said, that's right, we're here with you. So don't get yourself down. They were all heartbroken, but they all honestly knew that if they didn't return, they could lose somebody else. Even when Sarah returned to aid Rudius, it was really dangerous that they did that. Their entire party could have been wiped out. Sometimes you gotta know when to retreat. So Rudius speaks up. So where was it that you got separated? To the west, in Tier Forest. They lost visibility due to the blizzard, and eventually a herd of snow buffaloes attacked them. So that's what happened. That must have been tough. If Rudius remembered correctly, that was a half-day's journey away. Well, I should be going then. That, Rudius took his leave. I knew, man. Like immediately what was happening. He's like, oh, where at? Tier Forest? All right, peace out, guys. Straight to his inn. Gets into his ring, grabs all of his stuff, throws it on, goes right back downstairs, and heads out. On what he basically assumes is a fool's errand. He didn't even think about it. What was he doing? Why was he doing this? It's a fool's errand. Regardless, he wanted to go. He wanted to see for himself if that young girl, who was always vulgar to him, was really dead. He didn't know why. Seriously, he didn't. But still, he headed out into the blinding blizzard. And here's where we get so funny. This is so funny. The blizzard was an eyesore. Roxy had told him it was best not to meddle with weather. So he heeded her words as best as he could, but still, he created a tornado to disperse the blizzard away. There we go. The clear blue sky shone above him as he set forth, boots crunching in the snow. Cheater. It is so funny how honestly, again, remember like Timothy and Patrice and Suzanne, they gave up because they couldn't see anything. They had to retreat back to the town. Rudius like goes out there and is like, oh yeah, this is a bother. It's like such cheat. It's such a cheat. But again, he's not supposed to do that. It could cause catastrophes. You're basically spreading the weather around. Now, granted, to my argument, yes, the argument is that he's basically could be pushing a blizzard out to another town that's just dealt with a blizzard, and then they could possibly die from another blizzard, but he's just brushing away what's always there. Night just hit as he arrived at Ch3-4 Forest. Thanks to the weather manipulation, he didn't have to worry about the blizzard. Even still, he found himself pushing through high snow, waist-high snow. As he traveled through the snow, he eventually ran into snowfall treants, which pretty much threw snow on people to try to basically bury them in snow. He had to use wind magic to try to dry off his clothes because it kept getting so soaked it was heavy. He kept pushing forward, even though he was partly wondering why he was even doing it. There was no way that he could find Sarah. He doesn't even know where she was at. Doesn't know where they were. He didn't even bother to ask them where they lost her. And they probably took some time to look for her and they couldn't find her. And he even knew that he couldn't call out to find her because it would just drag in monsters. He was reminded what Soldat said. Half-assing. What was he even doing? This search did nothing to appease his own ego. What would satisfy him? I guess finding Sarah. Using his own methods. Dead or alive, the only thing that matters is that he took action. He's finally doing something. He's not half-assing things anymore. Again, Soldat's words seeped into him whether he likes it or not. Results. That's all he wanted. He didn't desperately want to save Sarah, or to repay Counter Arrow for their kindness. He just wanted to accomplish something. If you think about it, he's been spending months after months trying to find his mother, and nothing is happening. He hasn't seen success, even though he spent this whole entire time trying to seek something. You can kind of say that's him right here trying to finally achieve something, find somebody. He actively made the choice to not abandon somebody. Edis abandoned Rudius, left him depressed. He didn't want to do the same thing to someone else. The same horrible thing that was done to him. Now he's using Edis as an excuse for finding Sarah. He was abandoned before, and now he feels like, I kind of feel, I guess, what Sarah would be going through being abandoned, I guess. I guess there's a correlation there. Suddenly, he's seen a herd of snow buffaloes. Their gray coats made them camouflage in the blizzard, but thankfully, he's kind of cleared the area. He knows that they typically camouflage in the blizzard, and they would launch surprise attacks on people. They flock together in wooded areas, forming a herd and spending their winters birthing and rearing young. If someone was attacked by a herd, it was typically because they trespassed in their territory, meaning this was likely where Timothy and Sarah got separated. It was likely her corpse was in one of their bellies. While the buffaloes in his previous life were herbivores, these were carnivores. Rudius thinned their numbers with Earth Hedgehog, which took out about 10 of them. He followed it up with Earth Lances and finished off the rest. He began to search the bodies to find bones and flesh of their prey. He noticed that there was some remains of snow buffaloes mixed in there, so he kind of assumes they cannibalized their own kind. Rudius continued to search for Sarah's corpse, or at least something of her person. Finally, he found a human head, a face he had known. Mimir, the counter-arrow healer. Half of his head was eaten off. His cheeks were gone, leaving behind his forehead and part of his hair, enough to identify him. Rudius's breath caught in his throat as he realized that Mimir was dead, even though Timothy said so. He had forgotten completely because they moved immediately to talking about Sarah at the time. Honestly, him and Mimir didn't really talk much, but he remembers the awkward face Mimir gave him when they were talking about them abandoning him in Galgal ruins. At this point, Rudius placed the head inside of his bag. He wanted to bring something back with him. He blinked away the stinging sensation in his eyes, grated his teeth, and continued to search. He ended up finding an assortment of ornaments that people had worn. Amongst them was earrings that Sarah was wearing. He sighed. She was really dead. The buffaloes must have caught up with her, exhausted in the snow. Yes, she always berated him, but unlike Soldat, she wasn't harsh as of late. Her words never hurt, probably because she never really meant them. Given a chance, they probably could have gotten along. He chewed his lip, fighting back the tears. His task was complete. He got what he came for. With this, he piled up the corpses using earth magic, and then he set fire to it. He vacantly gazed at the flames, with no thoughts racing through his head. His heart felt empty. As he went to leave, he heard a faint creak of water freezing over. Something was out there. He had a bad feeling. He looked up and suddenly dodged to one side. His eye of foresight showed that a big ice block was going to land exactly where he was standing. Before him was a thick trunk, hundreds of years old, overgrown foliage blotting out the sky, an icefall treant. He's seen so many treants in the Great Forest and the Demon Continent, but this one was huge. How old was it? Obviously, they grew with age. This one was ancient. He tried to retreat from his attacks, but it was too large. He was swatted like a bug. The treant began to cast a spell, another slab of ice. Rudius used a shockwave to push himself away. He put everything into a stone cannon, but it didn't even hurt it. As he thought to retreat, he noticed something. A human figure wrapped in its roots. Sarah? She's there! This is so sad because I seen this in the PV, so I knew this was coming. Damn, second season PV. I was wondering who was in the roots. And I'm like, oh, it's gotta be Sarah. He's talking about ice treants. Sarah's missing. It's gonna be her. Is she alive? Is a big question mark, obviously, but still. Thanks, PV, for spoiling it. Never watch PVs again. I don't know, if there's another second season PV, it's gonna be really hard not to watch it. Rudius wasn't even sure if she was alive. She looked destroyed. He knew that these treants, they would typically kill people, put them in their roots, and they would draw nutrients from them. But he did notice that there was a grizzly inside of the roots, and it was still moving around. So there's a good chance that this thing was pulling things in before they were dead. So Sarah could be alive. He noticed at some point that the treant was doing the same attacks over and over again. It kept repeating the same rotation, like it was stuck in this loop that it did this one thing. It would throw an ice block, it would swipe at him over and over again. And he noticed that there was only certain roots that could reach him. So he took a chance. He cut each of these roots off that could reach him until eventually it stopped. It could no longer do its rotation of attacks. So Rudius slowly came towards it very cautiously and cut Sarah free and pulled her away, and then retreated. After a few hours of retreating with her, he eventually stopped to tend her wounds. It was severe. She was frostbitten all over. What was worse is that her femur was completely snapped in two, and her thigh was swollen. And yes, just like with the cat girls and dog girls, healing required direct contact. So he had to remove her shirt and her pants. He figures that she would say something, but she was silent. Yeah, Mimir probably had to do the same thing for her. That said, because of the snow from her crawling around, yes, made her underwear distractingly translucent. He had to avoid looking, but it was kind of difficult. Sarah spoke up. I was hit by a snow buffalo's charge and fell from a cliff. That's why my leg's broken. He figures that she was avoiding saying anything by explaining how she got injured. Maybe she was allowing him to see as a reward for saving her. Rudius, Get your mind back in check. You haven't done this in a while. Get your mind back in order. It was a sight for sore eyes. It was months since the last time he saw a woman. Rudius explained that he had found her earrings amongst some bones. According to her, it was a magic item that caused something to be caught up in an illusion if you stabbed it with the end of the feather. According to Sarah, after she got injured, she built a snow cave to endure the temperatures. She splinted her leg with an arrow, but then an icefall treant happened upon her and crushed her cave, taking her hostage. She finally questioned Rudius if he was done, covering herself with her hands. Oh, yes, thank you. Why the hell are you thanking me? She mumbled to herself. Her face was red as she slipped her pants back on. Her legs were swollen, but now healthy and supple. A leg worthy of gratitude. It was only natural to say thanks, no matter the circumstances. At least he shows gratitude if he's a stupid pervert. Now here's the weird part. This is the part that when I read it like 15 times, and I don't want the answer. Again, chat, everybody, comment section, I don't want the answer. For some reason, something felt off. Like, something was missing. Rudius decides to question Sarah. There's nothing wrong with your leg, is there? Yep, it's fine. It doesn't even hurt anymore. See? She flexed it. So, his magic hadn't failed. Then what was it? I just have a sense something is miss. Does anything about our situation feel off at all to you? Maybe it's about where I found your earring. Sarah says, no, since I dropped it, I wouldn't be surprised wherever you found it. Oh, but it is weird that you're here by yourself. Oh, no, it's just I heard Timothy and the others say that you were missing, so they went home after all. No, I didn't mean, it's fine. I don't blame them. An obvious decision given the circumstances. So, is everyone safe? No, Mimir's dead. I have a part of him right here. She took the bag and looked inside. Her face screwed up, seeing the contents before turning to sadness. I see. Does everyone know already? They seem very sure of his death. I thought if I brought his remains back, you could bury him somewhere. Yeah, that would probably make Mimir happy. At least let me carry his bag. Sure, I don't mind. With that, she took the bag and they went to leave. He couldn't figure out what was this strange feeling he had, so he decided to let it go. There was nothing he could do about it anyways. Okay, then let's go back. Yeah, she nodded. The meek way that she did it was cute, almost like Eris. Frantically, he shook his head to keep himself remembering her. Sarah yelled, hey. He glanced back to see a relief look on her face, smiling as if she would cry at any moment. Thank you for saving me. She was full of gratitude, and for some reason, he was captivated by that smile. He wished that he could see it forever. Something within him clicked together right then. It almost felt as if everything he had done up to that point was forgiven. He had been saved. It was strange he found himself thinking that, since he was the one who had saved her. It was near dawn when they reached Rosenberg. At some point, she wanted to camp, but he kept pushing her. He's like, he didn't want to get stuck out there any more days. There was familiar faces gathered at the front. Timothy, Suzanne, and Patrice. The moment Sarah spotted them, she rushed into the arms of Suzanne in her bosom. Suzanne says, what happened? We were just about to go search for you. Sarah speaks up, Rudius saved me. Their eyes were wide in disbelief. So that means last night, after you heard what we said, you immediately took off? By yourself? Well, I mean, and how are we supposed to feel if you died out there? Doing something so ridiculous. Rudius curled up at the scolding, but Sarah stepped in front of him. Hold on, Sarah, there's no need to put it like that. Yeah, I guess you're right. Not like I have any right to say anything. It just threw me off. I mean, I am grateful. So first, I guess I should say thank you for rescuing Sarah. Yes, Counter Arrow could have probably joined him, but the only reason that he was able to have it so easy is because he used magic to manipulate the weather. Timothy stepped forward. No, I should be the one thanking you. As the party leader, if Sarah hadn't come back home, I would have deeply regretted my decision. Thank you. How should we repay that debt? Feel free to name anything. That's not necessary. You've all helped me out so many times. Yes, honestly, they have done so much for Rudius. That's why he acted so quickly when he heard about Sarah. Let's just consider ourselves even. All right. Yeah. Then we'll be here if you ever need it. Oh yeah. Rudius? What is it? No. Sorry. It's nothing. Timothy had a slight conflicted look on his face as he shook his head. Yes, Rudius kind of had an idea of what he was going to offer, but he didn't press the issue. If he had asked, he probably would have declined. I'm assuming it's Timothy asking him to join the party. It doesn't really outright say it at this point, but I'm assuming with them losing Mimir and Rudius really being such a close member of them, he was obviously going to ask him if he wanted to join the group. But again, he knows he's not going to join. He's declined everybody else, and I think they probably know that he's planning on moving along here soon. If not, then they probably got that sense. With this, Counter Arrow accompanied Rudius all the way back to his inn. He was exhausted, as was Sarah. They had questions, but they prioritized getting him to his room. As they arrived, they parted ways. Sarah yelled out, Rudius, I'll see you around. She had been up all night, come to think of it. Unlike Rudius, who only spent a leisurely afternoon shoveling snow, she had been trapped in a raging blizzard in the forest with a broken leg, beset with horrific pain. She had to be fairly worn out too. He realized he should have probably agreed to camp outside. But if he had done that, they might have missed the others leaving Rosenberg. So in the end, it worked out. This feels kind of bad because, yes, if you think about it, she had her leg, the femur destroyed, tons of other bones. She was swelling, frostbitten. She was in freezing cold temperatures, stuck inside of a treant, which, yes, technically, as he mentioned, they would absorb the nutrients from the corpses that are in it. This girl was probably exhausted. And he's like, nope, we're not going to camp out. We're getting home. Girl's got grit. Girl has got grit. Rudius replied, yeah, see you. Make sure to get some rest today. She says, you too. He retired to his room, started a fire, went to the window to kind of let out some air, and he could see Counter Arrow from a distance. Sarah's eyes met Rudius's. She moved her lips to say something. He couldn't make it out, but he waved back at her as she walked away. She looked happy, scurrying away. He opted to sleep until dinner. He felt like today, for the first time in a while, he could sleep soundly. With that in mind, he flopped onto his mattress. And that is chapter 4. This is gonna be such a pain in the butt to edit. I'm going on like 5 segments, and it's gonna be a pain to edit, but it's worth it. It's always worth it for Mushoku Mondays. I look forward to this every single week, just like everybody else. I think I look forward to it more than most other people, but yeah, these chapters were absolutely fantastic. I think the big key points, like I mentioned before, it's Soldat pushing some sense into Rudius, telling him to grow up. Obviously, somebody from the outside looking in, seeing how just sulky Rudius is, and just trying to beat some sense into him. I know for a fact, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, I had to actually record this twice, by the way. So if I re-mention things, that's why. I apologize beforehand, but I'm still believing that Soldat is a good person. I know he's going to be the big teddy bear. He's the guy that probably seen somebody like Rudius at some point, that Rudius reminds him of somebody, and he doesn't want the same bad thing to happen to Rudius. Like, he's seen somebody die, and he's trying to help Rudius. He's trying to push Rudius away or to make him grow up. But I think he's going to be a big teddy bear. I just have a feeling Soldat is going to be like the coolest freaking dude once we actually get into him. But I mean, Soldat in general and his party is kind of, again, like our first indication of like an S-rank party being in the picture, and seeing that, again, that power level difference between the two of them is kind of fascinating. But yeah, looking forward to more Soldat, because I'm sure we're probably gonna get more Soldat. But no, I've been trying to kind of condense a lot of this stuff down as much as possible, and especially with these 2 chapters, we have a lot of combat sequences. But again, there's certain segments in that combat that I think need to be noted. Like, for instance, the whole thing with the Wraith. I think that was an important scene to see that you always have to learn things from your mistakes. You see something happened, and unfortunately for adventurers, a lot of mistakes equals death. And with Timothy, we've seen basically 2 instances where he had to make strong decisions. Now, granted, with the whole situation with the first Wraith that he mentions, he could have probably been not the one in charge, but he does note that somebody died. And he wanted to make sure that his new party, Counter Arrow, they practiced for the situation because he's experienced it before. And that's the unfortunate thing when we get into the 4th chapter, and the idea that he technically had to abandon Mimir. And, well, he's seen Mimir die. He probably made a mistake. He fled, and he had to leave Sarah behind, and he's regretting it. I think he still regrets it, because technically he did leave Sarah, and she was alive. He's still going to have that weigh on him. Just like Mimir had that probably weigh on him for Rudius, because he had to flee and basically leave Rudius behind. That's not a decision that people are happy about having to make. And I think Timothy, even though he's happy and grateful that Sarah didn't die, that she was still saved in the end, he probably regrets it in the end, because he's going to realize now she was alive. She was suffering. Now left her behind. I think all of them too. I mean, Patrice, probably especially Suzanne, because Suzanne's like a big teddy bear. She probably despised the fact that now, realizing she was in pain and I left her out there. I was at the Adventure Guild sitting around while she was in pain. But Rudius took action. But again, Rudius had to cheat. Let's be perfectly clear there. The weirdest thing, and again, I want to make sure beforehand, I think I mentioned it when I was getting that segment. The one thing that's still sticking to me, and I really hope that it answers eventually, and it's not just something I missed, was the mention that something felt off. And he questions Sarah, like, did the healing work? Are you good? And she's like, yeah, I'm good. She's stretching it. She's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm fit. The healing worked. And he's like, no, something feels off. Did something feel off about the situation to you? And he says specifically, maybe about where the earrings were found. She's like, well, no, I figure you're probably going to come across it. That's not surprising. I mean, there was a lot of jewelry there that was kind of gathered up. He mentioned the idea that the buffaloes themselves will leave flesh there so that it draws in more monsters, and then they consume them as well. It doesn't seem odd that they were there, especially since she said that she used it on a buffalo, if I remember correctly. It's a thing that you stick into something, and it makes them see some sort of illusion. And then she fell, and then she made a cave where the treant found her. So it's not surprising the buffalo would have it in it, and it would go back to this one spot and probably fall off onto the ground. And technically, when he found the buffaloes, she would have been nearby because she fell and the treant found her, and the treant found him. What is this off feeling? This is the part that's puzzling me. Like, why is something striking him? All I can think of is maybe it's a mental state that he's in right at the moment. Like, maybe because he accomplished something, he feels off about the situation. Maybe it's a new feeling he's ever had, so he feels off. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out eventually, but maybe somebody's watching him. Maybe that's what feels off. Maybe everything went smoother than he thought it would, so maybe something else happened around him. We'll see. Until then, I don't need spoilers. I don't need comments. I don't need chat, all that kind of stuff. But it is... I read that like 5 times going, am I missing something here? Or is this going to be just implied and we'll figure it out later? But no, I think the biggest hit in this whole entire segment is obviously the fact that Sarah was dead. Mimir was dead. When I first read that, my stomach dropped. Like, when I read that, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to stay up and keep reading because... Now, granted, unfortunately, PV spoiled this. Like, I did see the shot where Sarah was in the treant, so technically I knew that she was at least somewhere, that she wasn't completely gone. Now, the PV doesn't indicate if she was alive in the treant, but yes, technically, spoiler, I seen her in the treant, so I actually knew the moment that he said the icefall treant, when he was getting attacked by the snowfall treant, I'm like, he's gonna run into an icefall treant. That's totally gonna be what she's stuck in. But yeah, I am happy that she lived through it. Sucks for Mimir. Dude ditched on Rudius, so who cares? No, I did get a kick out of the fact that he had to like remind himself, like, crap, that's right, Mimir's dead. Oh well, Timothy told me that, but I forgot because we immediately started talking about Sarah, and that's all that's been in his mind ever since then was, I gotta go find Sarah. And then, oh yeah, Mimir too. Forgot about that. I gotta go find Sarah. But no, it was still kind of a stomach drop the moment I read that line of, it's Mimir and Sarah. Oh, they're eloping? No, they're dead. And like a stomach drop. Even though I knew I had that stomach drop. Honestly, I thought the only thing that kind of made me still have a stomach drop there is because it could have been, that shot in the PV could have been Timothy describing that, yeah, she got killed by a treant. That would make sense that the PV would show that. But no, like the big advancement in this chapter, like I said earlier, it feels like this whole volume, I think one of the most creative thing about this volume 7, is it feels so isolated. I've honestly here recently felt like this desire for it to do something else. Like in every single volume, it's always like, here's Roxy, now here's Paul, now here's Zenith, now here's Lilia, now here's it keeps jumping around. And you get perspectives of different people around the world and how they're all coming together or moving around the map. And this volume so far has only been Rudius. And I wonder if that's like a creative choice by the writer to not jump around right now. Like this volume, let's just focus on Rudius. It's almost like he's trying to make the reader stop and forget about everybody else and focus on Rudius and feel that isolation that he feels right now. This snowy, bland isolation that Rudius is in. Because, let's be honest, if Chapter 3 suddenly goes, here's Kishirika's perspective, and she's walking around Demon Continent going, ha 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 ha, it would pull you out of that isolation that we're feeling with Rudeus right now. So I actually do give the writer a lot of credit right now by how isolated Volume 7 is. As much as I miss everybody, that's the point, I think. I think he wants us to miss everybody because he wants us to feel like Rudeus feels right now. Yes, granted, in the previous chapters, he got that feeling of like, oh, I'm not alone. There is other people. I do have family. I do have a reason to live. But he still feels isolated. I think he's just barely got out of that Linkin Park zone. Like, he's just finally regaining that there's something besides Eris in my life. But he's still in the state of, like, still pushing fabric of pantsu on his head and talking about how, you know, he doesn't want to let Roxy, the goddess, down. He's still a child. He's still immature. And again, I think that's what's so great about Soldat. Soldat's telling him to grow up, boy. Stop half-assing things and grow up. But this segment, I think Volume 7, I think that's what this is going to be. I really do truly believe Volume 7 is going to be, let's watch Rudeus grow up. Because he's so isolated. He's away from his previous engagement. He no longer has somebody to protect him. He now has to do everything on his own. And yes, he went into this whole grand thing about, I need to find my mother, and I'm going to be good, and I'm going to have my smiley face on all the time. Again, Soldat's the only one that's seen through that. Or at least, everybody's seen through it. Just Soldat's the only one that spoke up. I'm getting back into Soldat again. But the big cool thing that happened in this volume really is, finally, Rudeus achieved something. And he said that when he went out. Again, Soldat yelled at him, told him he's half-assing things, essentially putting on Rudeus the idea that he's not accomplishing anything. So like when he clicked his tongue at him, he's like, what does he expect? I'm trying my hardest here. I'm trying to go towards this goal. Why does it make him so mad? He's finally realizing he's not accomplishing anything. And he feels like he's not accomplishing anything. His goal right now is find Zenith. It's been months, technically years if you count from the point that Paul informed him that Zenith is gone. He has not accomplished in finding Zenith. And he's starting to feel like it's all for no reason. I keep trying. Nothing comes back. She's probably already dead. No, stop thinking that. I gotta keep trying. And he's not accomplishing anything. He's got this goal, and he's nowhere near seeing the finish line. And so finally when something happened to Sarah, and he rushed out there to go find her, and he's going, why am I even doing this? There's no point. I didn't even ask him where she's at. Where's the last place they seen her? He rushed into it. But he wanted results. He wanted to prove Soldat wrong. I'm going to have results. That's all I want. Well, that will make me feel fulfilled. And then he finally finds Sarah. He found something. He's been searching all this time to find Zenith and is not finding her. I'm going to search for Sarah. I found her. I finally achieved something for once in so many months. I have finally achieved something. And not only that, but he reversed the whole thing with Eris. That was the other aspect of it, was that Eris abandoned me and I won't abandon her. I won't let Sarah feel the same thing I felt with Eris abandoning me. I'm going to find her. Again, that's kind of that twisted reverse that he sort of gets. But I think in the end, what the thing is that he finally achieved something for the first time in forever. But, yeah. I guess that's it. That's Mushoku Mondays for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Mondays. As per usual, I greatly appreciate you guys for your support. You guys are so amazing. Rip Mimir. Everybody rips in chat for Mimir. Rips in the comments for Mimir. I thank you guys so much for dropping by again. I love the chat. I love the premieres. I thank you guys so much for supporting me. I greatly appreciate it. Like I mentioned earlier, I thought last week's would be an absolute tanking in views and premiere viewership, but it was one of our best ones ever, and that meant so much to me. It literally just kind of drove me to keep going. We can keep going. I really did feel like, well, if it's only like 2 views, I'm just going to stop doing this. But again, every week is a struggle because it's a lot of effort to put this stuff together. I'm trying to condense it down more and more, get things shorter. I don't want to cut too much fat because sometimes there's stuff in there I want to really cover and I want to get context to. But in the end, even though it's a lot to put together, it kills the computer. I had to record this section twice because my camera decided to stop working. It's all worth it in the end when I fire up that premiere and everybody's in the chat, everybody's talking, and we're all having a great time. That's what makes it worth it. Every single week, it makes it worth it. You guys, this whole thing means a lot to me, and it's easily the thing that excites me every single week. And I hope that you guys understand how much that means to me.
But yes, and additionally, everybody that shares us out gets the views up. The views are up because you guys support it. You guys share it out. You hit the like button. You leave comments. You engage in the chat. Get the premieres going. Retweets. All that kind of stuff. That's what makes this happen, and I greatly appreciate it. But with that said, if you are new to the channel, make sure to that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. And additionally, yes, I have a playlist for all of Mushoku Mondays, so if you want to go back and start from the very beginning, we started from Volume 1, Chapter 1, and we've gone through all the way up to this point. So definitely check those out if you're new here. Additionally, all those that support us on Patreon, our tips link, our super thanks, and those that are members on the YouTube channel, I greatly appreciate you guys' monetary support. Again, means a lot to me. And until next Mushoku Mondays, you guys take care.